Thanks everybody for joining. Obviously, Mayday is a very important time of year for socialists, and it has been for many, many, many years. We are marking today kind of, specially this year because of some of the unprecedented attacks against federal workers, immigrants, the left, free speech, so many of the things that make this country actually function. And so us, along with a lot of other groups, are seizing the moment this year for May Day, and getting out into the streets to really seize this moment in our capacity as workers. So I'm actually going to toss it to Ashik to say a few words to get the call started, and then we've got a bunch of different great speakers talking about different things that are going on May Day, and in these areas of work that are especially relevant right now. So take it away, Ashik.
All right. Hey, comrades. It's so good to be here with you today. My name is Ashik Siddiq. I'm co-chair of Democratic Socialists of America. We're the largest socialist organization in the United States in many decades, probably in over a century. And May Day is a day that it's a uniquely international holiday where workers all over the world unite to celebrate our history and make demands of our future. And it's a holiday that actually has pretty deep American roots. A May Day protest in 1886 that happened in Chicago, where workers stood up to demand an 8-hour workday, which is something that many of us take for granted today, even as it's under attack with a lot of labor rights being rolled back in the U.S. But this protest in 1886 led to the Chicago police brutalizing a crowd of protesters in Haymarket Square, and these people became known as apostles of labor. Like 7 people were unjustly executed by the state for standing up for workers' rights, and this became a rallying cry for people all over the world. So May Day, which has a lot of almost prehistoric relevance, like there's for fertility rights, all these things, but it became an international workers' holiday. So people all over the world celebrate May Day as International Workers' Day. In the United States, all sorts of things happened that led to Labor Day in September kind of being put forward as an alternate day. But May Day is something that socialists really remember and commemorate. These are really important roots for us. And we're organizing in so many ways all over the world and in the United States to rebuild a labor movement, which has also been historically weakened for a long time. But this is a time where we recognize that we really stand on the shoulders of giants. And there are people all over the country who are helping revitalize the labor movement. You'll hear from a bunch of them on this call. And today, this year, it's also especially important to mobilize on May Day because of so much happening that has, huge international significance. So just in the past few months, this administration under Trump and Elon Musk has been escalating attacks on pro-Palestine organizers. So there are people like Mahmoud Khalil, who's a former UAW member, union member, Rumeysa Öztürk, like these students who are being detained illegally by ICE in Louisiana and in other places are people who've also become rallying cries for organizers all over the country. So these are things that DSA is throwing down for all over the country. We're standing up for migrant rights, for free speech, for students who are standing up for people who are really like bellwethers for all of our rights in this country and around the world. People are being illegally detained in El Salvador, like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who's a father and union worker. So these struggles are showing how everything is intertwined, and that's a big theme of this call today, where we'll be talking about how we're mobilizing for May Day to stand up for workers' rights, for migrant rights, for Palestine, for justice everywhere. And this is what May Day is all about. It's about showing how all of our struggles are intertwined, and there are so many things happening all over the country that are showing that Americans, like hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, are ready for an alternative. There are things happening like the Fighting Oligarchy tour that Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are having all over the country. So lots of people are turning up ready for an alternative, and it's really important for DSA to be there as an organization that is ready to absorb this energy and help channel it toward even more. We are building the political alternative. We're rebuilding the labor movement. We're standing up to leave nobody behind while people are being scapegoated by this administration. And this call is all about what we're doing toward Thursday and beyond. So very excited to hand it over to our next speakers. Thanks, comrades.
Thank you. Yes, and that was Ashik Siddiq, who is one of the co-chairs of DSA. You probably know who he is. I'm Sarah Hurd. I'm one of the labor co-chairs of DSA. And I'm now going to toss it to Valeria Ramirez, who is not only one of the labor co-chairs of Miami DSA, but also a member of the NLC Steering Committee and also the International Migrant Rights Working Group of the International Committee of DSA. So take it away, Valeria.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to be in this call with y'all and for all of the speakers that we're going to be hearing from today, but mostly excited to hear from all of your chapters after this call is said and done, to hear about the great work that hopefully will be inspired by this call. We're starting with one of my favorite folks to hear from, Jorge Mujica, who is going to talk to us a little bit about what Ashik spoke to, right? So the beginning of the Chicago immigrant movement, how Mayday came about, and will talk to us about the importance of continuing the fight and to fight for unions to become sanctuary unions. So I will toss it to the pro.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm becoming a pro on these things because 19 years ago, we did exactly the same thing. 19 years ago in 2006, we said we have to march nationally on May Day. And we had to explain what May Day was, incredibly. Even here in Chicago, because everybody forgot May Day. Everybody forgot that May Day was born in Chicago. And it was born by immigrants. 6 out of the 8 Chicago martyrs, the people who were executed and condemned and jailed because of the high market affair, were immigrants. And we recovered May Day and we brought it back to the United States working class. And we are doing exactly the same thing right now, but we are not doing it alone, because this time around, the administration made a terrible mistake. Instead of attacking only one community, they are attacking everybody now. They are attacking students, schools, colleges. They are attacking nurses. They are attacking the health system and benefits. They are attacking immigrants. They are attacking everybody. And that has allowed us to put together a fantastic coalition. I just hung up from a phone call with 1,400 people nationwide who are putting together all these May Day events. We are going to have events in at least 770 cities in the United States simultaneously. And I don't remember any other time when 770 cities or more than that do something together in one single particular day. And that day is May Day. It's called International Workers' Day. And we use it as international workers, not only because it's celebrated internationally, but because immigrants are international workers, are workers looking for jobs in some other country. Period. So we are international workers. It's our day. It's International Workers' Day. It's every worker day. And we are not only resisting, we are not only defending, but we are trying to push back. And one of the most important organizations to push back on this agenda are labor unions. We have to penetrate, we have to counter the ideology and the messaging that immigrants are criminals. 5 years ago, we were the heroes. We were the essential workers. We were the people bringing food, from the fields to everybody's doors. People who were not working or working remotely, we fed them. And all of a sudden, we find ourselves being criminals. That we have to defeat it, and we have to defeat it in our labor unions. We have to defeat the feeling that Donald Trump is making America great again. Please give me a break. And we have to do it in our labor unions. We have to counter this kind of messaging. We have to put language in our collective bargaining agreements to defend and protect immigrant workers. We have to defeat some practices, administrative practices of dislocating workers who don't have the proper documents, but have been working 10 and 20 and more years at a particular company. The I-9 audits, which I don't have time to explain. I could sometime if we have the time, but we have to make our labor unions sanctuaries. Not only the cities are sanctuaries, not only some states are sanctuaries, we have to bring the idea of sanctuary to our labor unions. And that's what we are gearing to. And, that's what we need. Strong organizations that encompass immigrants and encompass African Americans and encompass whites and encompass everybody, because everybody's part of the same working class. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great, Jorge and Why. We love having you around. Definitely super inspiring message as always. And yeah, I'm excited to see how we keep building the movement and building towards Mayday. We're gonna hear from a great speaker now who is in part of our national political committee and has been doing work in the intersection of immigrant rights and labor for a very long time. So we're gonna hear a bit about the continued struggles for international workers movements and student movements. And Luisa, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name is Luisa. I am on the MPC. I'm a formerly undocumented immigrant. I have the same dumb joke every time I do Know Your Rights training that I was undocumented just for a little bit, 16 years. Maybe it's only funny if you're undocumented too. But anyway, I worked a lot of jobs under the table as an undocumented worker. I wrote about it for Democratic Left a couple months ago. And so I just wanted to add a couple points to, Jorge, who just did a great job, by the way, about the 2006 Mayday strike. I taught labor history when I was in graduate school. I've done labor history workshops for K through 12 teachers. For labor notes, for unions. And it's kind of amazing to me how the 2006 Mayday strike is treated something outside of the US labor movement, when between 1.6 to 2 million, 2.2 million people participated, right? It was the largest strike in US history, not Seattle, not the steelworkers, Mayday 2006, but we don't talk about it that way, right? Latin American and immigrant workers restored faith that in something that racial capitalism is always trying to deny, that labor is the true source of wealth. And from that time, Cargill, Tyson Foods, and Seaboard Corporation announced that they would be closing their operations due to a lack of personnel on that day. Customers of fast food franchises in California were turned away by apologetic managers who explained that Mexican truckers had refused to deliver bread. There was a huge effect, but typically, of course, the English language media had actually pretty moderate coverage. Spanish language media covered it in the days and weeks even leading up to the strike, right? This was front page news, so we were going to strike on this day, but not in English. And so I would say, I would argue that it's part of a larger debate when it comes to the visibility of immigrant labor, right? That our labor matters and our issues matter because they impact our ability to work. And so for the Mayday strike, workers carried signs that said, "You might hate us, but you need us." Just reading briefly, Yolanda Lopez, a custodian and union organizer in California, said, "We are considered workers without faces. We are the ghosts who clean, but never have any type of recognition." So I think this is a very good fight we have now, which is to try to gain equity and respect. And that was the beauty of the 2006 Mayday strike, that we're not faceless immigrant landscapers, restaurant, construction workers, housekeepers, etc., which I would just name my family, by the way, that we were able to say in an organized way, we are workers and our labor is valuable. And from an internationalist perspective, I'll just add, like, immigrant workers from the global South particularly are doubly victimized. I hate to use this word because I don't see myself as a victim, but it's true that we're forcibly displaced by US military and economic imperialism in our home countries. And then we come to the United States to serve as a low wage labor pool. Oftentimes we're too scared to report worker abuses. I wrote about that. And so when we can do it in an organized way, we see the effects of that sense of pride and empowerment, and unions ultimately benefited. In the wake of Mayday strike, the percentage of workers joining unions increased for the first time in a generation. The Labor Council for Latin American Advancement reported close to 30% of the growth is attributed to Latin Americans, who added 120,000 members to the labor movement. And so I just lost notes. So, we can do, now see another amazing opportunity. Clearly, there's an effect. It benefits everybody to be inclusive. One way for us to be inclusive is DSA. One of the things I helped work on was a resolution that we passed in Palm Beach County. This does talk about police, so you would want to take this out. These were concessions. We called it a welcoming and inclusive schools resolution. We didn't want to call it sanctuary, that's fine, call it whatever the hell you want. But one of the ways that we can contribute as an organization is, for one thing, making sure that if ICE comes to school, that they're directed to legal counsel, right? To the Office of General Counsel. We write in school police, but you cross that out, okay? And then another thing that we said was the superintendent, we would have community partnerships where people can come in basically and do know your rights trainings, right? So we would have a space within schools, and this would work for campuses just as like university campuses just as well, to come in and do know your rights trainings and other types of immigrant justice work, right? And lastly, this was also important, I think I'm running out of time, that the resolution would be shared with everybody in the top 5 languages. So for there, it was Haitian, Creole, Portuguese, Cancoval, and Mam. And so not only would we pass this, we would talk about it, right? That we made sure that it went out to everybody. So I will stop there and I will pass it back to Val.
Thanks, Lisa. That was great. Yeah, and I think, we wanted to wrap up talking about migrant rights and how important they truly are. And like this intersection, right, between labor and migrant rights and community defense. I think we wanted to wrap this up by talking about what our chapters can do locally. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about what Miami's doing. I really would love to hear what we only have a bit of time in this call. I would love for folks, as I'm chatting, to like write in the chat, what is your chapter doing? And I'm gonna talk a little bit about Miami DSA, and then Brett is doing some like really awesome work in New Jersey, so we'll hear a bit from him as well. But it's going to look different everywhere, right? I think is something that we wanted to highlight. Every chapter, every state is going to have different levels of repression. But I wanted to make sure that we talked about kind of like the same message, right, as Luisa, like we like migrants, we're not like victims. We are like people with agency and workers that have a lot of value, right? And so Miami specifically, I think in these times it can feel very hard to organize, but Miami has been genuinely the blueprint, right, for the Trump administration, has been the blueprint for like all of the attacks on migrants, even though we're like a state filled with migrants. And so I just really wanted to point out that like resistance happens even in places like Miami. It happens in Florida. And we have been fighting back. We will continue to fight back. That's not that's not going to change in Miami. So yes, Miami is like, we've had a Republican trifecta since like 1991, I believe. It's a really hard place to organize in. And yet Miami DSA has been going to every and planning protests to defend migrants. We have been doing Know Your Rights trainings. We have had our chapter leaders and members take trainings on how to do community defense. And we are working with folks to pass resolutions through their unions to become sanctuary unions. All of those things are happening in Miami. They will continue to happen. And the reality is migrants will be in Miami past Trump's term, right? We're here to stay. And this is also our country. And yeah, I think like the fight continues. And I hope if folks take anything from this call is that like all of the attacks that come to us, like they've happened before. They've happened in the past and we've moved through them. And so I wanted to have Brett talk to us a little bit about what's happening in New Jersey.
Is Brett? Oh, there he is. Okay, great.
Awesome, thanks. Good evening, comrades. Good to see everybody tonight. So we've got a lot going on in New Jersey. For folks who aren't familiar with New Jersey, we have about a quarter of the people that live here are not born in the U.S. So we have a large, robust, diverse immigrant population here, and we're doing a lot to defend folks. So we've established a really robust immigrant justice working group that's united all 3 of the existing chapters in the state. And we've built really close alliances with local membership-based socialist immigrant community organizations, and together are working to grow a network of activists that are engaged in a range of community defense activities. So some of the main things that we're working on locally, designing and delivering Know Your Rights trainings all over the state, including to our chapter members in multiple different contexts. Canvassing major commercial corridors to protect employees and inform communities about how they can best protect themselves and know their rights. Training, onboarding, and coordinating folks to participate in networks for rapid response to ICE sightings. We have multiple rapid response networks across the state. Organizing actions against multiple ongoing efforts to expand ICE detention in the state. New Jersey DSA has been very active for a long period of years in the fight against ICE in New Jersey. We've had a number of successes, and now we're fighting against kind of some setbacks on that front. We're also training our members on marshaling and de-escalation, and making sure we show up to protect the rights of immigrant communities to protest the wave of repression that's happening. Making sure our immigrant communities feel safe by putting ourselves in the way of the repression that might come their way. So we've really been able to build and develop on coalitions that we have had, and strengthen existing coalitions and build more, inform our communities, build the organizing skills of our membership, and really advance a strong socialist vision of a world without borders here, and really a strong socialist vision shared amongst the diverse communities here.
Thanks, Brad. And yeah, like I mentioned, every chapter I think is doing all kinds of different work. Something I forgot to mention, but might be helpful to other folks, Miami DSA has been focusing on getting comrades to learn Spanish so that we can help folks more directly. And I do think that's a really important thing that all of our chapters should be doing some skills sharing. But yeah, everywhere it's going to look different, but resistance continues. I'm going to pass it to Tristan to talk to us about how chapters can get involved.
Thanks so much, y'all. I'm here as the co-chair of the International Migrant Rights Working Group, Tristan from Nashville. I think I'm mostly here to drop a link and make an invitation. Link I just dropped, perhaps it can get redropped here and there. We have a working group that can guide, mentor, support, amplify, coordinate, and otherwise interweave this work. We have in that link that I just dropped a toolkit that took quite a bit of work and a lot of collaborative process between a lot of experienced comrades. It's, I think by our count right now, been distributed to about 75 chapters and is being used hopefully as usefully as each chapter sees fit. It gives you some tips in a variety of areas that have been touched on by some of the speakers that I won't go into right now, but we also plan a series of trainings in those areas. One of those, just to highlight it, because it is a recent addition to this toolkit, is the resources on sanctuary unions. Thank you to Jorge, and probably to others, but to Jorge in my case, for drawing my attention to this beautiful term. A sanctuary union is a union that defends its immigrant members and the migrant workers in its industry, and also a union that builds density among migrant workers and US-born workers to build power to get better conditions, right? There's something in this for immigrants. There's also something in it for everyone else. That's what a sanctuary union is and what it does. And so you can look at the end of that section in the toolkit and see a couple examples if anyone's interested in trying them out in your union, your state federation, or your central labor council, of how you can do what some other unions have done, which is to declare that allegiance to the broader international working class. They don't all say that, but they say that they will make these efforts to defend, right? And I will leave us with that.
Thanks, Tristan. And I see we're getting called out for being over time. So I guess my last thoughts is join the NLC and join the Migrant Rights Working Group. I'm a little bit biased, but I do think it's the best section in our call. I'll pass it back to Sarah.
Thanks, Val. I concur. And I will quickly pass it to Ellen May from the Federal Unionist Network to talk about upcoming opportunities to support federal workers in their fight against the oligarchs.
Thanks, Sarah. And thanks everyone for being here tonight. So my name is Ellen May. I am a federal worker at the Department of Agriculture in the Food and Nutrition Services. I'm also a Boston DSA member, so live in Boston. And my coworkers and I, as employees of USDA, administer food programs like SNAP, WIC, the Free and Reduced Price Lunch Program, and like 13 other programs that feed people of all ages. And there's been a lot of just attacks on federal workers generally since January. My agency hasn't been hit by all of them, but we have been hit by the ones that directly impact how we can administer and monitor programs that feed people. So I'll just go through quickly some of the things that we have been hit by and one that we haven't, that connects to the broader labor fight. So first, in February, a lot of probationary employees, so people who are in their first or second year of employment, were fired, and we lost workers who in some cases came directly from the states that were giving school lunches to students that were like determining eligibility for SNAP benefits and getting people's access to like public assistance programs. Those people were fired, then they were brought back. There's an open question now if they're going to be fired again because administration has the ability to do that. We have been, if you live less than 50 miles from an office, no matter how long your commute, some of my coworkers have a 2-hour long commute, you've been forced to come back into the office full time. Even though our office had been partially telework since at least 2017. And it's changed a lot of quality of life for people. We've had our funding frozen for both the benefits that we can deliver out, so the money that goes to directly to like food banks, for example, so that they can purchase food that gets distributed to people, the money that goes to farmers so that they can connect with schools to get local produce into the school system. Those grants were frozen. And just the last one to talk about is there was a deferred resignation program, which is basically like a buyout offer, telling people that you can stop working and you'll get paid until September 30th, that the agency retains the right to end this agreement at any time, and to waive away all of your legal rights. And so those are just some of the things that we're kind of dealing with here. And a big thing that's happening at the federal level too is there was a decertification of collective bargaining rights. So about 1 million federal workers were told, I think it was at the beginning of April, maybe end of March, that they no longer had the right to be represented by a union, and that their union contract was considered null and void. This is, of course, a bigger attack than just on federal workers. It's an attack on labor as a whole and on public services that can be provided. But I'm here to talk about FUN, and I only have 4 minutes left. So the FUN is a federal unionist network, and it started out as a community of organizers that were working to reform our unions and also to put pressure on some congressionals to reform like federal labor relations. Obviously, since January, we've pivoted to ensuring that the federal workforce stays intact, and that we can continue to provide the services that the federal government provides across the entirety of the nation. So FUN is organized into like local chapters based in, and the makeup of FUN really depends on the networks of federal workers that have made contact with each other in a city. And FUN provides organizers spaces to connect with other federal worker organizers to figure out internal organizing in their own workplaces. And it also gives a place to give each other hope and strength to pull coworkers into during this time of extreme turmoil that we're all kind of facing in our workplaces. So here in Boston FUN, the kind of agencies that we have a lot of representation from are the Food and Nutrition Services, the Passport Agency, the EPA, and the Housing and Urban Development Agency, and also the NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is really providing a lot of the like connections among federal workers. with the shift from union reform to kind of focusing on the maintenance of the federal workforce, FUN has nationally sponsored 3 days of action since January. And just the third one is Mayday that's coming up. So it's, of course, Workers' Day. And so as federal workers, we want to be there with the other workers. A lot of what FUN has been doing is heavily focused on internal organizing within unionized workplaces and building connections between federal workplaces. So if something is happening at EPA, for example, then everybody else within Boston FUN can go to support our EPA coworkers. And we want to also, when building these connections and bring our really agitated coworkers into FUN, to also agitate them to become active within the union, so that so that we can go back to our original message of and goal of reforming our unions, so that we really are experiencing and living in like rank and file unionism. It's not just bureaucratic union from the top down telling us what you can and can't do. Locally, we're also building coalition with orgs that are already in the area. So here in Boston, for example, we are working with the Higher Education Labor United, the American Federation of Teachers, the Mass AFL-CIO to help plan the May Day rally that's coming up this week. And also partnering with private sector unions such as SCIU 509 to provide trainings to our coworkers on internal organizing skills and with the goal of coming up with strategic campaigns, both within Boston FUN and also locally within each of our workplaces, so that each agency is prepared to fight against the assaults that are coming down on us, and to keep our jobs and to keep serving the people who rely on our services. I think I was also asked to talk about how DSA can connect into FUN. So I've been a Boston DSA member for a lot longer than I've been a FUN member, because FUN is new. And one of the I think great strengths of DSA is that it is an org that has lots of labor staffers and that a lot of labor industry salts come out of. And it's also an org that has done lots of like training workshops that also like created Eat Walk. So DSA chapters can provide support to local federal unionist network. If they are kind of stood up, you can go to federalunionists.net to connect with other federal unionists and show up to rallies that FUN is hosting in the area, support federal workers if they are going to be fired or like RIFT, so that you can show that you want them to stay in their jobs. And also DSA can provide training to federal workers who for some are just newly becoming like activated and learning how to organize. I'll turn it back to the host.
Thank you so much, Ellen. And speaking of public sector workers, we're now going to hear from Jackson Potter. He's the vice president of the Chicago Teachers Union, who just won an incredible contract for their members, but won't stop there and are instead pushing to organize across unions across the country. I'll let him talk a little bit more about what big plans they have for May Day 2025 and beyond. Go ahead, Jackson.
Hey, what's up, DSA? Thanks a lot, Sarah. Appreciate it. You all are my heroes. A lot of incredible organizing and much more to come. I was just thinking today, we got word that we have hit over 1,000 cities and towns doing May Day marches and actions and teach-ins on May 1st. That's not counting all the Tesla actions on May 2nd or continuing efforts on May 3rd. So that is separate and distinct. And when I looked at the historic record, and certainly there may be DSA members who could prove me wrong, but a brief survey shows the highest city count we've seen since 1886 was 2006, when about 100 American cities marched. We had 400,000 in Chicago alone fighting the Sessenbrenner bill. I bet Jorge spoke a little bit about that earlier tonight. And we are at, 10 times that number of cities. Now, certainly we haven't represented and reflected what workers did in Chicago in 1886 in terms of the general strike, in terms of that level of, social resistance and opposition that won the 8-hour day, even in, the depths of depression. So yeah, proud to announce that, a couple days away, we've got over 1,000 events in all 50 states. And we plan to show Trump and his billionaire pals that they can't harm workers and public services to give the rich a tax break. And, breaking news, Bernie Sanders is speaking at the Philadelphia event. That's been confirmed. I know Jimmy Williams, the Painters International president, is speaking at that action as well. I think what's different about this than what we saw April 5th is you've got organizations with large bases that are multiracial and represent the working class coming together to hold down actions that are disruptive. It's not business as usual. It's people cutting out of work early or not going at all. It's saying that you can't run this economy without us. And we will demonstrate that. And this may not be as disruptive as we need it to become, but it's a good structure test for us to show what's the breadth and depth of the coalitions we need to grow and strengthen. I have heard AOC might be at the New York rally. Maybe somebody can confirm that. But I will suggest that Mayday mobilizations are going to help us build an ongoing pro-immigrant, pro-Black, anti-racist, working class politics in this country that DSA has already well created that surge, and we need to build upon it. So not only that workers and our communities can stop Trump and his billionaire agenda, but that, the insufficient rights we already possess have to be transformed into a more perfect union. We can't just depend on, negative rights. We need economic and social rights, housing for all, Medicare for all, not Medicaid for some. And I think we've all got a lot of connections and experience in democratic multiracial organizing. And so we can model, like good teachers do, what that looks like and how to do it well and do it right. We're planning on having a number of follow-up meetings to debrief this spectacular May Day, including regional organizing trainings, national convenings. We hope to do that alongside DSA. And we want to encourage all local groups who are doing actions on Thursday to, have an in-person debrief too. Like everything can't be done online. And a lot of folks that I saw on a call earlier tonight are going to their first protest. So it's really important that we connect them to the organization and human beings that can teach them some skills on how to relate to and organize others, that they will be excited and impressed, and we want to build upon that enthusiasm. So yeah, I think get ready and pump for May Day. I think this is the first steps into what could conceivably become a general strike if we need it. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, I think we will. These are not normal times. I think when you look at what has happened to AFGE, what has happened to other government workers, what the Fund Network has already described, the million workers that have lost union rights by the stroke of a pen, though it's being challenged in the courts, is 100 times what happened to PATCO in 1981. And that generated a million worker march in DC. Ultimately, that wasn't effective at stopping the onslaught, but it, was a representation of what could happen soon and what we might need to create and produce. But also, May Day, this is bringing together Mexican flags and Palestinian flags in one march. It's bringing together the Sunrise Movement with the Communication Workers of America. It's got the two largest unions in our country holding it down. Randy Weingarten talked about 800 AFT locals spreading the gospel of May Day. Never thought I'd hear that, but was glad that it was said tonight and shared. So, we've got a chance to defend our LGBTQIA siblings and make sure that civil rights are respected and advanced, that, ultimately the flaws in our democracy cannot stand. We're not just trying to go back to the insufficient situation that we've been experiencing, but, I want to make sure my 20,000 homeless students in Chicago get houses. You know, I want to make sure that our buildings that are 84 years old and with lead, asbestos, and mold get solar panels, heat pumps, and a fresh, coat of paint that doesn't have lead in it, and filters so they can drink the water, and better food. Not cutting the school lunch program, but improving it. So yeah, I hope that does what you'd hope for, Sarah. I don't know if I need to add anything, but
No, you did great. Thank you so much, Jackson. I'm now going to pass it to Olivia Killingsworth, who is one of the co-chairs of New York City DSA's Labor Working Group, to talk about how we're all going to show up on Thursday.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry. You guys, I'm joining you live from the remnants you can see behind me of a central Brooklyn branch meeting of New York City DSA. We are pumped for Mayday here in New York City. In New York City, we have over 70 unions and organizations that are signed on to come rally in Foley Square, down in Federal Plaza, in the middle of all of the government apparatus, and tell the billionaires, we are the many, they are the few. We want to stop the billionaire takeover. As Jackson said, we have some of the biggest unions in the country, some of their biggest locals here in New York City joining us, and lots of groups from the Communist Party to 1199 SEIU to New York City DSA. So we are showing up in solidarity with everyone, with the labor movement, with community organizations, especially with the immigrant community here in New York City. And I want to shout out, somebody mentioned, there was a questioner who mentioned Kilmar Abrego Garcia, our brother. And I want to say that one of the ways that I'm proud of, one of the ways that we as New York City DSA have been participating in the planning of our action here in New York City is we've been able to get on the programming committee that's been making a lot of decisions about who gets to be up on stage and speaking at the rally. And we pushed, along with a lot of immigrant groups, for folks to get up and speak on behalf of and call out the names of Mahmoud Khalil, of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and of a lot of our brothers and sisters who've been disappeared and detained and deported just for speaking their minds and exercising their First Amendment rights. So we will be out there as New York City DSA as a big contingent of hundreds of us. There will also probably be hundreds more of our members marching with their own unions and with other organizations. We're asking all of our members to show up in their DSA swag or in their union swag. And we're also printing out posters and little postcards that we've actually recruited an army of canvassers to talk to people in the crowd. So we're not just showing up as a contingent to march. We're actually sending people out into the crowd to talk to folks, especially a lot of the folks that I think Jackson referred to. There are going to be a lot of organized groups showing up on May Day, but there are also going to be a lot of folks who are coming out for their very first protest. And we want to show them that DSA can be a home for them. If they are looking for a place if they're outraged, if they're angry, if they're looking for a place to get organized, get into action, get into movement, take the fight to the oligarchs, we can be a home for them. So we're going to be handing out lit that has an action they can take, a little QR code, so they can send a letter to their rep to demand that stop the cuts on Social Security and Medicare. So that's our plan. And even tonight at the Central Brooklyn branch meeting, I recruited a few more folks. We recruited a few more folks and trained them to come and join us to canvass. So we are always organizing here in New York City DSA, and we hope that you, in your chapters, will do the same. And I'm going to toss it to my comrade Griffin to talk more about the nuts and bolts of doing that.
Hi, everyone. So we've heard a lot of descriptions of the local coalitions that are coming together around the country to demonstrate on May Day. And why do we need coalitions in this moment? Because when the government is abducting union members for political speech and taking away Americans' public services, we need to all come together to fight back against the attacks on our democratic rights and our living conditions. And Ellen spoke earlier about the Federal Unionist Network. One way that the Federal Unionist Network sort of came together in its earliest phases was less than a handful of people calling through a list of local presidents and secretaries and treasurers that had been assembled from the LM3s, the public forms that unions are required to file. That might not be the most time efficient way to reach people in other parts of the labor movement, but it gets to the point that building coalitions starts at the very least with having a list and doing direct outreach. And there's probably some of you on this call who you've already assembled your Mayday coalition, and there's probably some of you on the call who just put together your DSA chapter's labor working group and had your first meeting. And there's all sorts of people who would love to help you map your local labor movement and talk through trying to build a local labor coalition through your DSA chapter. So for, talking to people, you can reach out to nlc@dsacommittees.org. You could schedule time to meet with our labor staffer, Amanda, and you should reach out to, May 1st is in just a few days. But for future events, you should always reach out to all the local unions you're in touch with, the central labor councils, the churches. Ask them to join you at your action. There's no reason that we should feel squeamish about inviting organized groups of workers to pro-worker actions. And by virtue of unions showing up for these events, sometimes you get in touch with real leaders in those unions, not necessarily just position holders, but people who really move their coworkers. And once there's the transition from us from the outside externally reaching out to inviting people to actual members and coworkers coming to DSA events, that's where the real power in cohering people is at. And so I just wanted to motivate a little bit why coalitions are so important in this moment. And for future events, if you ever want to think through bringing together local unions, whether you have a lot of members in local unions or you have no idea where your members work yet, the NLC is a resource, and there are lots of people who would be happy to talk to you about that.
Thank you so much, Griffin. And yeah, to plus one what both Griffin and Jackson said, it's not enough just to show up one day and then everything gets fixed. I think we've learned our lesson on that we've got to be building long-term organization. And so doing those debriefs, making those long-term connections it's kind of the actual project. The showing up on the day is important, but the building for the long run is the real project. In pursuit of that, we're going to launch a quick poll so that you guys can let us know what you're planning, what kind of work in terms of immigrant rights organizing and Mayday you're planning on doing. So please fill out the poll while I just give some other information before we wind down the call. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is we've put a lot of information out there on this call. Don't worry if you missed some of it or you need a refresher. We created a Mayday toolkit that has basically all of this stuff in it that you can use for your Mayday event this year and hopefully continue to build on next year, the year after, 27, 28. We also have a form where, can other people see the poll? Cool.
Yeah, we can see it. You can't because you're a panelist.
Okay. But we've also made some ways for people to share events. So if you're hosting an event, we have a form for you to let us know so that we can throw it on our Action Network map. We're also encouraging people to put their events on the CTU map that is at, I think it's called maydaystrong.org. Check that out if you want to see what other stuff is going on in your neighborhood that maybe you didn't even know about. And this is very, very important. Please tag us in your photos so that we can just share out and blast around all the different cool stuff that people are doing on the day. So before we wrap up for the night, I'm just going to toss it to our other co-chair, Megan Romer, for some closing remarks.
Thanks so much. And thanks everybody for being here. My name is Megan. I use she, her pronouns, and I am Ashik's co-chair. You met Ashik earlier in the call. We are tag teaming on a pair of calls tonight. But I am very happy to be here and happy to see, I wasn't able to see the whole call, but what I was able to see was incredibly inspiring. I think one of the sort of through lines, right? The thing that we take away is that none of these struggles are standalone. Labor is not a standalone struggle. Immigration is not a standalone struggle. Queer rights, not a standalone struggle. Abortion rights, not a standalone struggle. These are all interconnected. They are all part and parcel of the rotten system of capitalism that we are fighting against. And we need you. If you are not yet a DSA member, we need you to join DSA today. It's dsausa.org/join. We need you. We need your energy. We need your creativity. We need the ties that you have to your community. Maybe you're in a union, but you're not in DSA. Join DSA and help be that tie between your union and DSA. Maybe you're part of a social movement of some sort. Maybe you're part of a church movement. Maybe you're part of, who knows, some sort of connected group of people that you can become that connection between DSA and that movement. And all of the movements, right? DSA is the biggest socialist organization in the country right now, but we need to be orders of magnitude bigger. And it's not just a group of faceless people. Every single person brings their story, their connections, their resources, their ideas, their courage. Collective courage is very important right now. So please join DSA, become part of this movement, become part of the glue that holds all of these different pieces together and fights against the one thing that connects them all, which is the evils of capitalism. So I hope to see you soon at a meeting. Have a blast on Mayday. Show them who's big and who's small. Show them how powerful the working class is. Solidarity.
Thank you so much, Megan. And just to answer one question in the chat, are there going to be ongoing coalitions post-Mayday? There are if you build them. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. We've got to do it ourselves. But thank you, everybody. I'm going to share the results of our poll real quick so everybody can see what everybody's up to. But that's all we've got for the night. So hope to see you guys all out there on May 1st, this Thursday. And I hope we can all continue to build this movement for years and years to come.
Thanks for facilitating, Sarah. And thanks to all of our panelists. Bye, all.